Anyone got a pencil? Hello, my name's Mark and I'm the host of the Mixtape podcast, where every week on the show I will ask my guests to make up an imaginary mixtape. They'll give it a title and pick 6 tracks. Track 1, what's going to be your intro track, your attention grabber, your track 1 side one that's going to draw me in and make me want to listen to the rest of your tape. Track 2, pick a song that you sing loud and proud when you're on your own in the car or the shower. Track 3, pick your favourite cover version. Track 4, pick a song you wish you could have played to your 18-year-old self. Track 5, pick a song that you would put on your mixtape to let the listener know that you are romantically interested. And track 6, I'm going to ask them to pick something a little bit obscure, maybe a B-side or an album track. Don't forget to smash that follow or plus sign at the top of the page and you'll be notified every time there's a new episode. And you can follow me on Instagram at the Mixtape Perf. Hope you enjoy this week's chat. Hello and welcome to today's mixtape. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Scott from the Crystal Method. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing fantastic. I love that t-shirt of yours.
Oh, thanks, mate. I caught them in. I got this from the show in Perth about, would it be 2 weeks ago now?
Oh wow!
Yeah, fantastic show. Yeah, really good one. They played an amazing venue in Perth, in the Perth Hills, which is like it's called Red Hill Amphitheatre, and it's just like it's an actual amphitheatre, but it's like concrete steps. Amazing venue. First time I've ever been there. As you look down at the stage, you can look out on Perth sort of city and all the surrounds. Yeah, it's a great venue. So speaking of venues, you're coming to Perth in Australia yourself. I'll just go through the tour dates really quickly. So it's March 2024. The Metro in Sydney, the 1st of March. 2nd of March, the Triffid in Brisbane. And the 6th of March, the Lion Arts in Adelaide. And 7th, Max Watts in Melbourne. And the 9th, the Rosemount Hotel in Perth. MetropolisTouring.com for tickets for those. Are you looking forward to getting back down under, Scott? It hasn't been that long since you've been here, has it? It was last year, maybe?
It was actually last year at this time, but it had been quite a few years. Obviously, with the COVID lockdown and restrictions, I was pushed back. I think I was supposed to be there in June or July of 2020, and of course, everything got shut down, and that just kept getting pushed back. So, I was thrilled to be able to come down there and hang out. I always have a great time in Australia. It's just really one of my favorite places to play. The people are so appreciative of the fact that, artists go down there, they show up, they show out, they bring the energy, the excitement. So my set in Perth at the end of the tour was no exception. So when I got the word that I was being invited back down, I was super stoked and I guess, really obviously grateful for the opportunity and looking forward to it.
And over the years, you've been on the Big Day Out tours as well. You must have some great memories of being around Australia. I've spoken to other artists. I think Rick from Ash I spoke to as well, and he had some fantastic memories. How was that for you? I mean, it's a bit of a shame we don't have it anymore.
Yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't, now that everything's, opened back up and there's all this excitement for touring. You would have thought that they would be able to put the team back together and take that back out on the road. Well, I mean, many memories, wonderful memories, seeing some amazing bands. I remember the one year we were out there, the White Stripes had just kicked off and they were doing their first big tour and playing, I think, on a side stage and seeing them up close, and Meg and Jack just throwing down in their, multiple, striped white, everything. I remember we did a radio show and we were in the room with them and there was just this, amazing attention to detail and they just sounded so raw and so, incredible. And I remember being front row at a garbage show where, Shirley's like, she's got that milky white skin and the sun was beating down on her, and she took my wife's sun hat and wore it for the show, and came up to us afterwards and gave us a big hug and thanked us for helping her hide her from the sun for those 40 minutes. Seeing New Order, the year that we were down there, and Tool was the headliner, and the amazing after parties that they would have in all the venues. I remember one where I was hanging out with Tool and became really good friends with Justin from Tool, and there was a after party. I think it was Melbourne, and Serena Williams had just won the Australian Open, and all the members of Tool went to watch her win, and they had a couple tennis balls they had brought from the match, and we were in the after party just bouncing the tennis balls around the venue and having a great deal of fun with like Peaches. The Killers were on that tour. The Muse was on that tour. It was, the village vibe of touring on the big day out was unlike anything else that we'd ever been a part of. Everybody kind of travels together. They kind of stay in the same hotels. They have these after parties. You get a chance to like mingle and, make friends. And I remember doing a Flaming Dr. Peppers with Prodigy after the Perth show. I think my partner at the time, Ken Jordan, got really excited about showing all the members how to drink these Flaming Dr. Peppers, and he came back to the hotel and almost got into a fight with Peter Hook's security guard. It's just like all these just amazing memories rush back when you bring that up. And of course, the crowds. The first time we ever went down there was prior to us playing a big day out, and I just remember being, we were at some warehouse in Sydney, and I just was blown away that our music had reached the ears and hearts of so many down there, and there was all this excitement, and every single time we've come back, we felt the same bit of love and enthusiasm for our music and for our presence. So that's always been something that's been dear to me and to Ken over the years, and to get a chance to come back down there in 2024 is really exciting.
Can't wait to see you, mate. Just, you mentioned Ken there briefly, and I know he's no longer with the Crystal Method, but do you still keep in touch? And
he's now living in Costa Rica. Him and his wife moved down there, and he's fully retired from making music. He still DJs out and about. Actually, I was just down there the end of July and early August for his 60th birthday. He had a surprise birthday party, so a bunch of friends and from around the world got a chance to fly down there and surprise him, and it was truly phenomenal opportunity to not only to reconnect with Ken, who I see on and off over the years and talk to every once in a while, but to see how he's been welcomed into this community of like-minded, incredible people down there, and how much he means to them, and to be able to experience that, to be able to see your best friend and partner for so many years going into that second act and do it with such grace and such love and appreciation from all those that know him, and get a chance to know and be his friend now. It was something really spectacular for me, and so I do see him every once in a while, and we send music to each other. Oh, I like this track. What do you did you check this track out? So it's not as often as obviously we used to, but it's still great to see him every once in a while.
And when you are on tour, Scott, I noticed you got a few days sort of break in between your shows when you're down in Australia. What do you like to get up to? Do you like to make the most of the time in Australia and get out and about and do some sightseeing?
Absolutely. And actually, I'm trying to come up with a plan to spend a couple of days in Perth at the end with my girlfriend. So I'm going to be looking to for the locals to help me out with something that's I think the weather's still going to be decent right around in mid-March. Is that kind of like your early fall? Is that end of summer, early fall?
March is very early fall or autumn, as we call it here. But it's not too. February is the hot month. That's the hottest month. It's regularly up around sort of high 30s, sometimes 40. So that you work in Fahrenheit, don't you? So that would be like 100. Yeah, so that it gets quite hot in February, but March is a really good time. It's just sort of cooling off. March and April, I always feel are like the best times whenever I'm talking to people about coming to visit.
Well, yeah. I will take any local tips on where to, if you want to, if you could share those with me, of just a couple of days, somewhere where near the water, experience the, the beauty of the, the beauty of the, 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 the beautiful sunsets and just something that's that if you were a local would like to go to. I don't, something that's quintessential Perth in March, like something, whether it's a little bit exotic, a little bit of a journey. I definitely will have the time to spend a few days down there, and then I think we're going to make our way back, and then make our way back home eventually. But we'd love to spend, a quality few days in Perth and do some just relaxing and soak in the environment.
I think one of the things that Perth has, a big advantage that Perth has over the East Coast, is we have the sunsets over the ocean, which obviously they don't have on the East Coast. And Scarborough Beach is an amazing place to see the ocean, to see the sunset rather. There's loads of really nice restaurants and bars and stuff along that sort of ocean front. But if you're wanting to get out and see some places, Rottnest Island is about a 45-minute ferry from Perth city centre, and it's an amazing place. It's like called? Rottnest, Rottest, Rottnest Island. You get a ferry to it from Perth, pretty much from the city centre, and it takes about 45 minutes to get there. And they have some pretty unique wildlife there. They have quokkas there. It's like going back in time. There's no cars on the island. There's a few buses that get around, but everybody gets around on a bicycle to sort of see the island. And there's obviously hotels and a couple of pubs and places like that. But it's just such a beautiful place to go and visit. From the hustle and bustle of the city to getting out there and just getting off. Every time you get off the ferry, you just go. It's just such a calming sort of vibe. The place is just, it's amazing. And having a quokka selfie, which is like these little furry animals that are sort of quite tame and getting around the place, that's sort of like the archetypal sort of WA Perth sort of tourist thing to do, is to get a selfie with a quokka. So that's pretty much I've been living here 13 years and I've only just got mine like last year. I did my quokka selfie. So it took me a while to get there, but it's a beautiful place. Rottnest Island, I would heartily recommend that as well. And like I say, there's record shops all over the place in Perth. There's loads of them. I wanted to talk to you as well about I watched probably, what would it be, 12 or so series or seasons, 20 odd episodes a season of the show Bones. And it wasn't until like years after I found out, I think it was through a pub quiz I think I was doing, and I found out that the theme tune to Bones was the Crystal Method. And the second I knew, I was like, course, it doesn't sound like anyone else. Like, how did I not know? Like that was you. Like, how did that come about? I know you do a lot of soundtrack work and stuff like that. How did that come about? And do you enjoy that sort of process of doing soundtracks and games and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, that one we were in between projects. We got a phone call from the show creator. And they were looking for something that could an intro the show. It was going to be quirky. It had it sounded like to me of a it was like the scientist and the sort of the more straight-laced kind of edgy law enforcement person. It sort of had a little bit of a X-Files kind of vibe to it from there's some some of that quirkiness to it, and mystery, and solving kind of strange mysteries, and so that we just took that as the lead, and it had that little just we started with that, and then they gave us a couple of references to some things off of Tweekend, like Wild, Sweet, and Cool was, I think, a reference, and so we just it just came together pretty quickly, and they were one or two revisions, and they were like, we love it, and it launched the show, and it's been, and the show was on for 15 years. I mean, we went to like the 1000th episode or something. I don't know if it was 1000. Maybe that's too many, but it was like 200 or 300 or something that was like maybe 100, definitely more than 100. But I remember there was a party, and we got to meet the cast, and we got to tour the facilities at on the Fox lot, and see the big, the big room, and where they're all, dissecting, bodies and stuff. And yeah, it's just one of those projects that, we went into it with, no expectations. They were really kind, and, gave us some really great tips on what they were looking for, and we were able to deliver. And it's been like one of those tracks that, again, the success of the show, and it's always like an easy thing to, like, if you're sitting on the next to an airplane next to someone that and you start a conversation, and they're like, well, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, oh, I'm in a band. We make music. And, I go, have you ever seen the TV series Bones? And, like, 9 out of 10 people are like, yeah, I love that show. And it's like, oh, we wrote the theme song for that. And it's immediately like, oh, that's I know that song. I remember one time I was going to get a photographer for like a birthday party. Knocked on the door. The person was playing, I get Bones in their daughter or their wife or somebody was playing, Bones was on, and they was like, oh, you like Bones? And like, yeah, we were talking back and forth. And I said, oh, my partner and I wrote the theme song for that. And we had done a revision. The producers were redoing the intro, and so they wanted a longer version, something a little bit different, still the same, and all I could immediately heard, I like the original version better. like people get, so it's like it becomes part of the show's DNA. Like, people know the theme so well, and it becomes, they love the show, they love the theme, and and so it's been one of those things that has really opened up. I don't know how much it's opened up our fan base, but it's definitely opened up the recognition for the band, and it's been something that we're really grateful to have the opportunity to do.
Yeah. Let's drop into the mixtape choices. Now, as you know, my radio show is called The Mixtape. So what I like to do is it's kind of like, that thing where you make up a mixtape and, you pass it on to your friends. There's a way of sort of spreading the music, and sort of the show is kind of my way of doing that, but like on a slightly larger scale. So I always ask my guests to try and sort of put themselves in that position of making up an imaginary mixtape. And when I make up a mixtape, I always like to kick it off with a sort of killer track, an attention grabber. So if you were making up a mixtape, Scott, what would be your track one sort of attention grabber that you would put on there?
Well, it's this remix I just did with my good mate Hyper. So I was Fat Mike from NoFX reached out to me or the end of last year or earlier this year, can't remember now, but he and his guitarist we're coming up with this new project called Melvinator, where they reimagined NoFX songs in a sort of an EDM-esque format. So they re-recorded the vocals and guitars and drums, and so he asked if I would do a remix of one of these new reimagined tracks called Goddess, and the results are pretty heavy, and they definitely, this is something that will get you going, get your heartbeat up a little bit.
Awesome. So what I do, Scott, normally is on the radio show, as we're talking, I drop the tracks in between the chat, so it gives like a lot more context of what we're listening to. But when I put the podcast out, obviously the songs are licensed content, so I can't include them in the podcast. But what I do is I'll put a Spotify playlist together of the tracks that you pick, and then I'll put some Crystal Method tracks on there as well, and then I link that in the description of the podcast, so people can, if they want, drop out of the podcast chat and into the description and listen to the tracks that you're picking. Track 2, Scott, of the mixtape is a song that you sing loud and proud when you're on your own in the car or the shower, mate.
Well, in a shameless self-promotion way, I definitely am very happy with this remix that I did with my mate Future Funk Squad, Glenn from Future Funk Squad, from this track from a band called the Bluestones. And yeah, it's just one of these really big, fun, full-throated kind of rock songs, and yeah, I just had a great deal of fun with the remix. And yeah, it's called Stay With Me. And again, it's another heart-thumping, big drums, lots of great energy, and one that you definitely could sing along to.
Yeah, sure. And I wanted to ask you as well, Scott, like you collaborate with a lot of different artists. Like I was writing some down earlier, like some of the people you work with, like Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, Wes Borland, Peter Hook, you mentioned the order earlier on, Tool, Jean-Michel Jarre, like, how do you find it, like, creatively, like, working with so many different people all the time? Like, do you feel like it keeps you sort of on your toes and keeps you like fresh, or how do you find working with all those different people?
Well, it's I found that over the years, the best collaborations are people you get along with and you have some sort of common conversation with, whether it's about music or you get along with really well in the room. There are a lot of artists that Ken and I have admired and looked up to over the years. You just never know what it's going to be like when you get in the room with them. And one of the very first collaborations was Tom Morello, and that, because we had done everything pretty much on our own. Vegas had a collaboration with unknown artist at the time named Trixie, but that was kind of like we were both hungry and coming up with these tracks to so that album came out, had some great success, and we started getting word that certain artists were into it, and one of the people that we reached out to was Tom Morello, and you just never know how that dynamic's going to be when you get in the room with him. But he could not have been kinder. I mean, everybody knows this. He's a professional. He's an incredible human being. And even though that we didn't know this at the time, Rage was going through all this little bit of drama. We would find out only a few months later that they ended up breaking up, in early 2000 or mid to late 2001 or early 2002. So I mean, we didn't get. He just showed up. He drove all the way out to our studio in La Crescenta, which was probably at least a 20-30 minute drive for him. Never walked in with anything that he brought in from the outside world. Was always present. Was always into it. We worked on 3 or 4 songs together, and just a gem of a human being, and just incredible musician, obviously. So that really kicked things off, and so everything that was kind of the standard going forward. So Wes Borland, he was incredible as well, amazing guitar player, really great ideas. We had collaborated with Scott Weiland, which was interesting because we never got into the room with Scott Weiland. We were sending him. We sent him a track, and he was like, "Oh, this is cool. Send me the stems." Send him the stems. We thought we were going to get the phone call to like go and hang out with him, but we didn't, realize until later, after I started, hearing about his process with Stone Temple Pilots, is that even his band members in Stone Temple Pilots weren't in the room when he did vocals. He was very much do it on my own. And then I don't know if it was a shy thing or if it was, or just the way that's the way he preferred to work. So, and then Razel and another, he came to our studio. So we've been very fortunate to work with some really talented and incredible artists and human beings over the years. And like one of the songs that I've got coming up here in a little bit, a track called Watch Me Now, which was a collaboration with Coda and Val, 2 LA artists that I met randomly in a writer's session a couple of years ago, prior to right before COVID. We were in this writing session together, and out in Palm Springs, and just a kind of a way to just get out of my bubble and interact with some talented artists, and so I met these 2 guys, and we created this track Watch Me Now, which I again, I know I'm skipping ahead, but that definitely would be one that I would look to as one of my favorite collaborations over the last few years.
So track 3 of your mixtape, Scott, is your favorite cover version, mate, and what did you pick for that one?
Well, I picked this track that I've been really into for the last 9 months from an artist called Abstract. And although he named the track differently than the cover, which I find is really kind of odd that people do this, and that people have been doing this more and more often. They use the lyrics or the vocal from a track, and then they rename it for their own. So the track is called Hostile, and it's a cover of New Order's Confusion. Really cool track.
Peter Hook and The Light are coming to Perth next year, because obviously Peter Hook doesn't tour with New Order anymore, which is a real shame.
Gut-wrench. Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, New Order was played at a festival out here last month, and I love New Order, one of my favorite bands of all time, but just not the same without Hookie out there.
It's horrible in both ways, because I love New Order, and obviously Joy Division, one of my favorite bands. I don't want to see New Order without Peter Hook but I also don't want to see Peter Hook playing New Order songs without Bernard and Gillian and Stephen. Like, it just, neither of them
It's
do it for me.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? It's just, they're
yeah,
both
yeah.
still doing it, but neither of them do it for me. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I did see the light. They played a show out here a few years back, and he was doing the Substance album, which is one of my favorite album. That is like, beginning to end, just chock full of just some of my favorite New Order tracks. So it was cool, and like I was, well, if only it could be, because I was very fortunate to see New Order a few times over the years. I saw them on the Technique tour, which was incredible. Saw them, of course, quite a few times on that Big Day Out tour where they're doing their own shows in between, and seen them a few other times. But yeah, I like you. I'd want to see the four of them together, and it really missed that dynamic and it was they were, they were all different. I mean, Bernard was like shy and meek and kind of like, in his element, exactly like you think he's going to be when you see them live, when you hear him. Jillian's like, statuesque, playing all these great chords, and got Stephen back there, hammering away, and then you just got Hookie's just like slinging it. He's like, his bass is like fucking low down on his hip, and he's just like, he's a quintessential fucking cool dude. Like, so I mean, so it was fortunate when we were able to work with him. He came to our studio, and we were able to like witness his process. He's like, I don't want to hear the track. He didn't want to hear the track that we had set up for him before. He wants to hear it for the first time when he's got his bass around his neck, and he wants to react. And so he just did all these. I mean, we probably had 3 songs worth of material just from him, just reacting and letting his mind, wander and find melodies. And it was really incredible to watch.
Track 4, Scott, is pick a song for your mixtape that you wish you could have played to your 18-year-old self. What did you pick for that one, mate?
Well, this is the collaboration I spoke about earlier. It's something off of my latest album, The Trip Out, and it's called Watch Me Now. And it's just this, one thing I love about it is just how organically it came together in the studio. Really, really quickly, we got the bones together of this track, and it was, I brought my trusty Roland Jupiter 6 over to my friend Val's place, and just started playing this little progression, and then, Coda jumped on. He was playing bass. We started recording, and, within a few hours we had the skeleton track that would become Watch Me Now. And it's just energetic. It's alive. It's got this, vibe that's rock and electronic elements in it. And it's just something that there's definitely 1,000 tracks I could have played from other artists to inspire me and as that 18-year-old self, but just this one sort of was the first thing that came to mind as far as something. I wouldn't even have to tell my 18-year-old self, you're going to be part of this song in the future. I would just say this track, is kind of what you're into. You're into rock, you're into, electronic elements, distortion, big drums. And this is one of those tracks that I think, again, also this could be a great sing-along track as well. So it's definitely one of my favorite collaborations I've been a part of over the last 5 to 10 years.
What sort of stuff were you actually listening to when you were 18, Scott?
Well, I was listening to bands like New Order, Depeche Mode. I mean, I still had my love of like Metallica and Judas Priest and AC/DC and then I was getting into hip hop, Beastie Boys and Public Enemy and just as the Cult, Jane's Addiction. There was just all this stuff, the Cure. There's just all this stuff that was happening, and I was DJing in this little club on Thursday nights, and I had taken over for Ken when he moved to California. Mm-hmm. I think I was probably 19, but I was still, I had all these albums, and I was just, Ministry and Cabaret Voltaire and just this eclectic bunch of tracks that, maybe you know, came from different parts of the world and from different genres, but to me they just sounded great together and the crowd was super energetic. And so I think that Watch Me Now would fit well in one of those sets.
Was there like kind of, you mentioned, we talked a little bit about New Order and Depeche Mode as well. They're Depeche Mode are from the town that I grew up in London, just outside London. They're both sort of bands who kind of bridge that kind of electronic synthy but also rock sort of sound. Was that something that inspired you and was like a conscious thought when you were sort of making music yourself, that you wanted to make that kind of, that sort of collaboration of between the rock and the sort of the more synthy stuff?
Yeah, I mean the album that really changed everything for me was Black Celebration. So when I remember a friend of mine, because I was still really into rock at the time. I was, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, AC/DC, Motley Crue, Metallica. I was just really, that was where my head was in that genre. And I knew of band, Depeche Mode had People Are People, and there was New Order out there, but it was just kind of like I didn't, I appreciated it as songs. I could appreciate the songs, but it wasn't something I gravitated towards for whatever reason. But I remember sitting in the back of the of English class or whatever, and my friend Jason says, "You got to hear this," and he goes, I go, "What is it?" He said, "Just listen to it. Just don't. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Just listen to it." And I put it on. It was like boom, dun 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 boom, like let's have a black celebration. Boom. I was like, what the fuck is this? This is cinematic, and it's dark, and it's gloomy, and it's fucking heavy, and it's like, it's melodic, and it just had all these elements that I was like, the genre barrier that was gone. It evaporated. I was like, that night I went and got the album, came home and listened to it like 5 times, and just and just absorbed myself in this sound that like I said, big drums, cinematic. It was dark, it was heavy, it was gloomy, it was it was emotive. And so I'd sit in my living room and air drum to Depeche Mode, and then drop the needle on a Metallica or Crew track and do the same. So that started to open my ears open to a whole different thing, and that from that point on, all the barriers were down as far as being genre specific or being loyal to any particular sound. I'm seeing them tomorrow night in San Diego.
Nice.
So I'm super stoked for that.
They don't come to Australia that often. I don't think they've been here since I've been living here, and I miss them. But yeah, hopefully it won't be too long. I think Perth gets overlooked a fair bit for the bigger sort of tours because we're so far away from the rest of Australia. We're actually closer to Jakarta in Indonesia than we are to like Adelaide and Sydney here in Perth. We're sort of stuck out here on our own. So when tours come, it's quite frustrating sometimes to see the tour dates, and it goes Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and that's it. And it's one of the things I sort of dislike most about living in Perth. But Depeche Mode, I think, are one of those. If they did that, I would be getting on a plane and flying to Sydney or Melbourne or Adelaide to see them, because it's been too long, I think. Yeah, for sure.
I can't believe they've got to go back they've got to go down there this year. I would think so.
I would think so. We've got like a lot in Perth. It's got a lot better, and I think promoters, as particularly like Metropolis, since I've been working with them, they've really upped their game, and they've been a lot more proactive about bringing tours to Australia. And I think post-COVID as well, there was a lot postponed, and they're all starting to come back now and get rescheduled. And we've got a sort of almost, well, not new venue, but there's a new stadium that's only a couple of 3 years old, maybe. That's a sort of 60,000 capacity. And there's a fairly new indoor venue as well, the RAC Arena, that holds about 10,000, I think. That's only 7 or 8 years old. So, yeah, we've got a lot more infrastructure now, and there's a lot more it's a lot more appealing, I think, for bands to come here and tour. So, yeah, fingers crossed yeah, Dave and Depeche Mode, if you're watching, yeah, get yourselves down here. Can't wait to see you.
Yeah, get your ass down to Australia.
Yeah. Okay, track 5, Scott. We've all done it when we're making up a tape for someone. We're trying to let them know that we're sort of romantically interested in them and trying to woo someone with a mixtape. So what would be a track you would put on there to let the listener know that you're romantically keen, mate?
Well, I'm only speaking from experience here because I've recently done a set and played this for my new girlfriend. It's a track. I think it's a few years old actually, but it's from this band called The Magician, and it's a track. It's called Shy, featuring Brayton Bowman, and it's just it's a pretty poppy EDM electronic track that's really well produced and a great vocal, and it's not too lovey-dovey, but it gets the point across.
Yeah, that's the way. No nonsense. I think from my experience of asking this question, I do analyse the choices quite a lot, and the choices that the male guests that I have make versus the choices that the female guests that I have make in that song choice, you can really see like there's a sort of a real marked line between the women and the men and the sort of songs that they pick for that. The men's ones like yours, it tends to be like a lot more sort of like to the point and, upfront and, whereas the women's choices, it can be a lot more sort of abstract and, yeah, sort of a little bit more, what's the word? Sort of not vague, but, a little bit more sort of make you think about it a little bit more rather than, yeah. But then saying that, I had Danita Sparks from L7 was on the show last week, and she picked "Shoop" by Salt and Pepper as a song to let the listener know, which was an amazing choice. I wasn't expecting that at all, and yeah, she picked an ABBA track as well as a song she sings in the shower. Yeah, I was not expecting that. Like, that's one of the things I love about doing this. You sort of find out what people's sort of influences are, and outside of their own sort of genre. Yeah, she was a fantastic guest. That was a really good one. I really enjoyed that chat. Okay, and finally, Scott, track 6 of your mixtape. When I make one up, I always like to throw one on that's something a bit left field, a little bit out there, maybe an album track or B-side or something that's a little bit obscure, mate. So what did you pick for that?
Well, I went with a track that it could have fit into a couple of these other questions, and it's from one of my favorite bands. Really incredible to see them live. I'm not sure how many times they've made it down to Australia, but the band Arcade Fire, and it's the sort of the I don't know if it's the title track. I don't think it was released as a single, so I'm going to call it an album track called Age of Anxiety, and it's just a really well produced, beautiful track that kind of, for me, going through a breakup in my marriage over the last 24 months, has this sort of, this has made a connection, and it's a really cool track. It's quintessential Arcade Fire. It breaks off in the middle and does this great build out. So yeah, one of my favorite bands of the last 15, 20 years. Definitely one of these bands, when you see them live, you just really appreciate their musicianship and their camaraderie and their ability to continue to stay relevant and make music that's that people enjoy and people sing along to. So that's definitely one of the first thing I thought of. I'm not going to lie to you. I got this request earlier today, so if next time we do this, I'm going to go a little deeper. I'm going to bust out my own version of ABBA for sure. But yeah, the track "Age of Anxiety" is definitely one that I've listened to quite a lot, and I appreciate with as one of those songs that I just not a single, but something that's really a fine song.
Yeah, fantastic choice. I love a bit of Arcade Fire. I think that, as far as I know, they haven't been to Australia in the recent years, but yeah, so fingers crossed it won't be too long. But yeah, they're quite high on my list of bands to see live. I've never seen them live, so yeah, that would be a good one for sure. Scott, thanks so much for coming on the mixtape, mate, and giving me your choices. Really, really appreciate it. Can't wait to see you at Rosemount Hotel in Perth on, what date was that one? The 9th of March. MetropolisTouring.com for tickets for those. Safe travels, mate, and I'll see you when you get down under.
All right, appreciate it. Looking forward to hanging out. Thanks
Cheers,
for
mate.
the tips.
See ya.
All right,
yeah, no problem. Cheers, mate. That was the Mixtape podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, to jump up to the top of the page and smash that follow button, and you'll be notified every time there's a new episode. Or follow me on Instagram at the Mixtape Perf. Till the next time.